Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a US political live stream update where I'm going to talk you through an awful lot of stuff that's going on in the United States. We are going to be talking about the Epstein scandal and the voting on the discharge petition to release the files. We're going to be talking about Mohammed bin Salman and what's going on there. We had the Saudi leader in the White House, in the Oval Office, talking with Trump, and that was all thoroughly controversial. And we're going to finish up talking about redistricting and what's been going on in Texas, and actually a little talk about Indiana as well. So if you're interested in American politics, this is hopefully going to be for you. Okay, right. Let's now start then by talking in. Well, let's talk about the context of the discharge petition. So you guys hopefully understand discharge petition is a way of bypassing the speaker. So normally the speaker for the House of Representatives, the majority speaker, in this case Mike Johnson for the Republicans, will dictate what gets to be put on the table to talk about in terms of bills. And he wasn't ever going to bring a bill about the Epstein files to the House, of course. So there's a way around this called the discharge petition that can be forced on the back of, basically, I won't get into details of it, but essentially it required over 50% of the representatives, so 218, and we saw the shutdown of the government for 7 weeks plus. Mike Johnson saying, we can't agree on a budget, we're going to shut down until we can get some kind of concession from the Democrats, or Democrats get a concession from the Republicans. But there are many people who would argue that part of the shutdown, part of the rationale for the shutdown, was that this discharge petition required one more vote to make it 218 votes, and that vote was going to come from the newly elected Democrat representative from the 7th District in Arizona, Adelita Grijalva. And Johnson then closed down the government, and she was not sworn in for 7 weeks plus. Absolutely outrageous that she had been elected to represent her district and could not do so. But really, it was about not allowing the discharge petition to get through. Anyway, the Democrats then made a concession through the senators with Chuck Schumer, and he got a lot of stick for supposedly caving to the Republicans, but actually that's now in the distant past, and it could well be that really what was behind his capitulation to the Republicans was then forcing the speaker, Mike Johnson, to swear in Grijalva, who would then be the 218th signatory. And my goodness, how it's all gone nuts. So then we had the vote. Well, then we had Donald Trump saying, hey, hang on, right? I think you should now go and vote for this, Republicans, which was a massive turnaround. What you had with the 4 Republicans, you had Thomas Massie, one of the authors with Ro Khanna from the Democrats, Thomas Massie, the Kentucky representative, very MAGA otherwise. Then you had Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, all 3 very MAGA. So the real super MAGA base, very interested in and always have been in the Epstein files being published. This is very big in the MAGA base, the Epstein scandal, probably because it was thought to be implicating many Democrats, but actually that doesn't seem to be so clearly the case anymore. So these guys were going to cross the aisle, and that would get them to 218. But because of all of the released Epstein emails that were coming from not the Epstein files, but the Epstein estate. So the Epstein estate still holds a bunch of stuff. The birthday book was released by the House Oversight Committee that has access, can subpoena the Epstein estate to release things that can't be released from the DOJ files. And they released 3 chains of emails that were so controversial for Trump that everyone started going nuts. And then the Republicans released 20,000 other emails thinking that that would actually go the other way. But actually some of those emails were equally as revealing. And so Donald Trump was in a bit of a tailspin there, because he doesn't want to be seen to be on the losing side of anything, right? So Donald Trump goes, right, I can't lose this. It will just be, it's just not part of who I am. I can't handle being on the losing side. So I need to read the tea leaves, and the tea leaves are looking like, oh, it's looking like there's going to be this snowball effect that was going to get all of these Republican representatives from the House of Representatives to actually vote for the discharge petition. And it was looking more and more like there's going to be a snowball. And it could even get to a point where there were enough Republicans voting that would be an overwhelming supermajority that would mean it was veto proof if it got through the Senate and gets to the presidential desk. So he's like, well, I can't say I'm not going to do this and be seen to go against all of these Republican and Democrat lawmakers who are saying we need to go through this. So therefore, I'm going to say you need to vote for this. However, and this is all the lead up to this point, and this is almost the most important point of the whole video. If Donald Trump wanted the Epstein files released, he could have done that months ago, and he could do that now like that. He doesn't need to go through Congress to release the Epstein files, or he can make Congress vote for them and do it through the congressional pathway, but he doesn't need to. So the fact that the Epstein files have not been published already is precisely because Donald Trump does not want them published. So whatever Trump is doing now, whatever he's saying in public now, it is through gritted teeth at the most, because the man does not want the Epstein files released. We know that. It's a fact. No one can contest this, because if he really wanted them released, they would be, he's the president. They would be released. They are not released because he doesn't want them released. So whatever he is doing right now in terms of telling Republican lawmakers to do X, Y, and Z, it is in the context of him not wanting this discharge petition to be a success. He does not want the files released. That is the absolute given. Right. So indeed, as Who's Poppin said, it is all performative. And I'm not sure where, yeah, you could say it's performative, but it's almost like he has no other option. There is no other option than for him to kind of publicly say one thing, but in private, he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth here. So the question is, well, what's he going to do with it? Now, to just give you, before we go into loads of stimulus here and sources, what has just happened is the discharge petition was voted on by the House of Representatives, and it was almost unanimous. I've just got a shiver down my spine. 427 out of the 428 representatives voted for it. The only person that didn't was Louisiana Representative Clay Higgins, who is a pretty dodgy person anyway. I mean, I think he had voted for David Duke, the actual Ku Klux Klan guy, like white supremacist, to be governor in Louisiana. I think he did. So anyway, something like that. Clay Higgins is not a cool guy. So it's kind of perhaps unsurprising that someone like him was saying, oh, I'm out of principle, scare quotes, principle. He said, look, it's not the right way of doing it, and came up with the usual kind of arguments that don't really hold water. So 427 was a staggering majority, almost unanimous. And what the Senate did very cleverly, Chuck Schumer was behind this, was that they, in order to expedite this, because it physically has to come to the Senate and then they read through it and then they vote on it, is to do this unanimous vote up front. I forget what it's called, but essentially he says, right, is everyone up for this bill just going straight through? Can we vote on it now before it gets here? We know what it's all about. Unless there's anyone that vetoes this, it needs to 100% of you guys need to agree here, then it will just be green lit, so that as soon as it hits Senate, it goes through Senate and straight to the White House. And the Senate unanimously, because people were worried that actually the Senate might be an obstacle to this going from the House of Representatives, through Congress up to the White House, but actually the Senate have 100% gone with this. I think people are reading the tea leaves. So this is going to Trump's desk. Now, he's got two options. One, he signs it off, in which case the Epstein files are out there. The problem is Trump's name appears the most in the Epstein files out of anyone in the Epstein files other than Jeffrey Epstein himself. Remember, he had what was it, 1,000 FBI members. They were reassigned to go through the files when he took over to redact them in terms of Trump's appearance in them. And Trump, by all accounts, is the single name after Jeffrey Epstein that appears in them the most. That is staggering. So Donald Trump is going to be sweating. Even if he is innocent of any kind of wrongdoing, well, I don't think he can be innocent of wrongdoing because he would know 100% what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. And therefore, by not reporting him, he would be complicit. So at the very minimum, Donald Trump is complicit in Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. But the maximum, he's involved in them as well. But even if he's not involved in them, he's all over them. This is absolutely terrible news for Donald Trump. So he either doesn't sign them or he does sign the bill, right, to get these files out there. Or he, as I said the other day, he says, well, I've opened an investigation and it turns out that investigation is only into Democrats. This should tell you all you need to know. Like any other president doing something like this would be front page news for the next 3 weeks. If Joe Biden has said, I am going to do a DOJ investigation only into the Republicans involved with this scandal, and I'm going to leave everyone else out, that Fox News would go absolutely ballistic. What Trump has done is outrageous, but so many outrageous things are happening at the moment. We kind of don't realize the sheer level of outrageousness here. But he's saying, you're going to do an investigation, Pam Bondi, my attorney general, and you are going to investigate we're going to reopen the Epstein inquiry effectively, and you are going to look at people like Larry Summers and Bill Clinton and blah, 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 blah. Right, Reid Hoffman, go and look at all these people and see how much these guys are implicated in the Epstein scandal. And that then reopens the Epstein case. Now, why this is important is because you cannot then publish the files during an open investigation. And it is, I've been talking about it for some time, how actually this is the reason why the Democrats didn't release the files. But you've got Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Majority Speaker for the Republicans, saying, where were the Democrats? Look, it's all Democrats this, Democrats that, Democrats this at the moment, talking about the Epstein files. Well, they were silent for the last 4 years, weren't they? Oh, Democrats, this is just political opportunism, and oh my goodness, it's horrific. Actually, I'll let this this reporter tell you what for.
Discuss what's going on here with Miami Herald investigative reporter Julie K. Brown. Just a reminder, her reporting in 2017 and 2018 exposed so many of these horrific details of Epstein's alleged sex trafficking ring. She's also the author of a great book I recommend, Perversion of Justice, the Jeffrey Epstein story. Julie, welcome back to the show. So hours before bringing the Epstein vote to the House floor today, Speaker Mike Johnson said this. Take a listen.
The Democrats had every one of the Epstein files in their possession for the 4 long years of the Biden administration. The Biden Department of Justice had the files the entire time. And not a single one of the people who are so loud and animated right now, they never said anything about it for all those 4 years.
Is that accurate?
Well, it's not only inaccurate, it's ridiculous. I mean, the case was an open criminal investigation during the Biden administration. They were pursuing charges against Ghislaine Maxwell, as we know. They obtained a conviction, and after that, she appealed. You cannot open up your criminal case files when a case is still open, and by being under appeal, the case still remained open. Also, by the way, we really don't know to what extent they were still trying to hold other people accountable in this case. They obtained a lot more information in the past couple of years from new victims who have come forward, and they may very well have still been investigating other possible charges against other possible people who were involved. It always kind of surprised me that one of the things the Trump administration never said when they came into office, or never mentioned whether the case was still an open investigation or a closed one. And so we're still left wondering what kind of case they were building possibly against some of these other wealthy and powerful people who were involved with Epstein.
So there you go. There is a reason that the Democrats did nothing for 4 years, because literally they couldn't. It was an open investigation. And that's why you've got those Epstein files, a huge volume of files. And then here we are now with Mike Johnson coming up with the same tired old excuse. So we've had those emails that have been released that have been incredibly impactful. Epstein, I've met some very bad people, none as bad as Trump, not one decent cell in his body. I know how dirty Donald is. And remember, and I don't want to be all conspiracy theorist about this, but Mehdi Hassan was just talking about this in an interview I was just watching, where he's saying, like, just remember that Jeffrey Epstein said, I've got enough on Trump to take him down. I'm paraphrasing, but it's almost the same as that quote. He was talking about being able to take Donald Trump down. And then just a little while later, he ends up being dead. So the idea that Epstein committed suicide is incredibly controversial. And indeed, I think what we're going to do now is just listen to the 9 things in the discharge petition that the discharge petition is seeking to do. And one of those is actually to look into the death of Jeffrey Epstein. There's enough in there, there's enough dodginess surrounding it to know that it does need, for us to know that it does need to be investigated. So we're going to go to Ari Melba. Now, I know some of you who might not be a fan of MSNBC, which is now called MS Now. But anyway, this guy's an attorney and an anchor on MS Now. He talks you through, very usefully, talks us through the 9 different points of what the discharge petition is going to investigate. And although this might take a few minutes to go through, I think it's well worthwhile.
Already a veto-proof majority, which means Trump is powerless. He's been cut out of this process. So what?
And just by the way, to reiterate there, the size of the majority means that actually Trump can't veto it, so he can't vote it down. So actually, the only thing he can do is really claim that there's an open investigation, and I fully or doctor the files, and we're going to look at that idea in a wee while.
What are they asking for? The Epstein investigation files. That makes sense. That could go all the way back to the first time he was indicted in Florida, and he got a pretty sweet deal, and the later indictment that led to him being incarcerated under the Trump DOJ, and then he was famously found dead in his cell, and we could talk about that because they want more info on that too. But number 2, Maxwell, his jailed co-conspirator. They want the info on her investigations and, of course, prosecution. They want the travel records, flight logs. That could tell you manifests, which are kept pretty carefully, especially when you go around the world and different governments have different requirements. And so accurate manifests are going to have even more people who may have flown on his plane who have been hiding it even up to now. Then it says they want individuals and government officials who have been named. We saw some of that in these new emails that just came out. This would be more. Entities, corporate, academic, you name it, that are involved in Epstein and are in the files, in the government's possession, they want that. And any immunity deals and non-prosecution agreements. Now, as a lawyer, I can tell you sometimes you get in some trouble and then you reach a kind of deal, and it's called this NPA or sometimes a DPA, deferred prosecution. And those are often hard to get all the details on, and there are good reasons sometimes for that. But here, Congress is saying, no, they write the laws. They may have laws that say generally the DOJ gets more secrecy. They're now demanding that out. This is a big one. Number 7, the bill that just passed, says they want internal DOJ communications. That's bad news for Trump if they have been doing a cover-up. And in my other breakdowns, I've already reminded you about some of the public facts that we know. Pam Bondi said there was a client list, then there wasn't. Said there was nothing else to investigate, and then as this heat built, she claimed, after Trump demanded, they were going to start new investigations. Well, that looks like a cover-up or malfeasance at the DOJ. They want the internal communications. That might be harder to get. Indeed, judges might say on some of these, well, there's a reason why the DOJ gets some secrecy there. It could also go back to other administrations. Then it says all communications, memoranda, directives, logs, metadata regarding the destruction, deletion, alteration, misplacement, or concealment of documents, recordings, or electronic data related to Epstein.
So that's super important. All of the information about what's been destroyed, what's been redacted, so on and so forth. I mean, the question I have, and I'm sure many of you have, is what are the government able to do if they wanted to destroy the evidence? I mean, I guess they are able to do whatever they want, but what can they get away with doing, and what's legally within their ability to do, and what's not legally within their ability to do? But is there the potential for them doing that anyway, so on and so forth? I mean, that's an incredibly important part of this.
Now, what about him? It says relating to Epstein's detention and death or any investigative files. That's really striking. That is the government of the United States, both houses of Congress, both parties, basically saying that there's a legitimate avenue of inquiry there. And you may say, well, that doesn't mean that he didn't commit suicide in his cell. That's been the official story. That's what the government has asserted. But they're not investigating the moon landing. They're not investigating every question that's ever happened. And I get why people are cynical and skeptical, but a lot just changed. And this is the government of the United States raising the question of whether there is more to the story. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean he was definitely murdered in his cell. We certainly haven't reported that. But they are worried about, at a minimum, obstruction of justice and whether people were hiding that or destroying materials. If you're wondering, okay, who would that hit? Well, first it would hit Bill Barr and the Trump DOJ, which was in charge when Epstein was in that prison under federal custody in the first term. But after that, the Biden DOJ came in. This could affect anything they did if they did anything. And when the government works, you have that kind of transparency. I get why people are cynical and we hear about partisanship. This could, depending on what happened, be a headache for a lot of people in both parties, but they want to get that material. Number 9 says documentation of Epstein's detention or death related, including incident reports, witness interviews, medical files, autopsy reports. Now, that matters because the Inspector General of the DOJ did a review of Epstein's death. But we don't have all the documentation. You can go look that up on the internet if you want. It's called the Justice Department Inspector General Review of Epstein. It was released during the Biden administration because they were reviewing what happened. But there might be material from there, witness interviews or other material that is not public. We've seen a lot of questions about that, and there was missing video as well. So that's what's actually in here. If you got...
Okay, so that I thought there's a really useful synopsis, and thank you for Ari Melba for putting that together. A really useful synopsis to show you exactly what the discharge petition is seeking to do. That gives us a good sense of where it's going, and I think that's pretty comprehensive. Now, we've already heard that Mike Johnson,
President Trump,
trying to be defensive of Trump. Really, Mike Johnson. I wouldn't call him the attack dog of Donald Trump because he doesn't remotely look like that. But he is doing Trump's bidding here. So this is before, I think, the discharge petition vote, this press conference that you see, and where he was defending the non-publishing of the files. And saying it was Democrats. He ended up voting for it, right? So I guess that allows you to realize exactly, what he could read the tea leaves himself pretty accurately, I figure. Now, I'm not going to show you this. This is 2.5 minutes of a reporter very eloquently going through the question. It's not entirely this is a summary of her question. I guess I'm confused, she said, because the bill specifically says the Attorney General may withhold or redact portions related to child sex abuse materials. The survivors are comfortable with that, though. So these things are actually in this bill. So this is before the vote happened. Mike Johnson then went on the defensive here, saying, actually, look, if you look at USC 18 or whatever it is, and then this doesn't have the definition of that, and that doesn't have and he was trying to defend this from a kind of technical point of view that as to why the discharge petition shouldn't be able to go through. This is before he ended up voting for it. And it's been pointed out below, like his arguments just were wrong. They were just, the definition is in the, this is literally from 18 UCS 2256, by the way. The definition, he says, is nowhere in this, and it's literally in there. So like, he is desperately trying to stop this discharge petition from going ahead by using these quasi-technical arguments that are demonstrably wrong. Like, as he's saying this, well, look, actually it's not here, or this is it, and you could be won over by the assertions and his reference to these documents, but actually everything he said was absolute BS. Johnson claims the bill cites statutes that don't define CSAM, but 18 USC 2256 is literally the federal definition of child sex abuse material. The bill gives the DOJ authority to redact it. His argument collapses the moment you read the law. So, like, just be careful. Like Mike Johnson, he looks squeaky clean and he sounds like he knows what he's talking about there, but he's essentially lying or doesn't have a clue what he's talking about in that context. Right, now let's go to him. I think this is after the bill. So why so nervous, Mike?
Any reaction to Leader Thune you seeing the bill without adding amendments or changing it?
So sorry. Right. I'm remembering what he's reacting to. So what happened, as I've told you already, the Senate passed the bill without even kind of formally looking at it. They know what's in the discharge petition, right? So, but they're not going to amend it or look at it. In fact, they've greenlit it before it gets to the Senate. So it goes straight through the Senate. Now, what I think Mike Johnson was hoping is that, well, okay, if I vote for this discharge petition and all these other Republicans do, then we are going to rely on the Senate to then amend it and change it in the way that we really want it changed. So they can put in these things that gives Donald Trump an off ramp and makes it not so wide reaching and so on and so forth. And then what happened is the Senate were like, no, we're going to greenlight the whole thing. Thank you very much. See you later. And now Mike Johnson is crapping himself. So this is why he looks so nervous. So this is, let's listen to him here.
Any reaction to Leader Thune you seeing the bill without adding amendments or changing it?
I'm deeply disappointed in this outcome. I think I've been at the state dinner. I don't know. I was just told that Chuck Schumer rushed it to the floor and put it out there preemptively. It needed amendments. I just spoke to the president about that. We'll see what happens.
So do you think he may veto it? You say you spoke to the president?
I'm not saying that.
Is he supportive of it in its current form?
We both have concerns about it, so we'll see. I was standing there with the Crown Prince.
Are you frustrated in the majority leader? Are you upset with the majority leader?
So, wow. That is absolutely fascinating, in my humble opinion. What you have here is Mike Johnson saying, I have serious concerns about this bill, and President Trump has concerns about it. We were hoping it was going to get amended. The Senate has passed it through, not happy about it. So Trump is not going to be happy about that. You can tell that through what Mike Johnson is saying. He's spoken to Trump. This is not good news. They were hoping to amend it so that the worst wasn't going to be on the cards for, I presume, Trump. Incredible, absolutely incredible. Then we have this. So the idea is, like I've told you, that Trump now can't veto it. It's not been amended, so he has to sign it in, or he relies on something like the open investigation, which is, I think, exactly what's going on here. But now listen to Thomas Massie, who is the co-sponsor of this bill, speaking with Ro Khanna on CNN.
If the administration doesn't release what it has, what will you do as the two who led this charge and were the originals that are the reason we're here tonight?
Well, as Rose said, there are criminal penalties if they don't follow the law.
Oof. So they is the White House administration. They is Donald Trump. There are criminal penalties if they don't follow the law.
That are the reason we're here tonight.
Well, as Rose said, there are criminal penalties if they don't follow the law. And that's the recourse that we would follow. We undertook it.
That's the recourse we would follow.
A very steep hill, a steep climb to get this done. There have been subpoenas, there have been resolutions, there's been an oversight committee. Those are all sort of Mother May I requests to the administration. We decided to do this as a law, which means it has to pass both chambers and even be signed by the man who was opposed to it. At least be presented to him. He could have always vetoed it. And because we're going to overcome all three of those hurdles, our recourse is legal now. These people could eventually go to jail for not releasing these files.
Who does he mean by people could go to jail for not releasing these files? The only person that can not release these files now is Donald Trump and his administration. So although it could be other people in the administration, really, Thomas Massey is throwing the law at Donald Trump here and saying, look, if this doesn't go through, if we don't succeed here properly, if you put more and more obstacles up here, then you're going to find some handcuffs coming your way. It's absolutely incredible. Now, Thomas Massey just blew up Mike Johnson's entire excuse. Johnson is now claiming the Epstein bill risks exposing non-credible victims, but survivors support this bill and have said so repeatedly. So Massey is asking the real question, is Mike Johnson calling every Epstein survivor non-credible just to protect the men who flew to that island? Because that's exactly what it looks like. So this is the idea, and I probably should have had this a little bit earlier, like one of the arguments from Mike Johnson against the bill being brought to the bill successfully going through Congress is that it risks the disclosure of non-credible allegations, creating new victims. So saying that there's now, you could disclose these non-believable, trumped up charges against randos that will create new victims in this, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, the people who are up for these files being published, who are the most important aspect of this decision, are the victims, right? The survivors who have said, no, we're up for this. We want these to be published. So then we get on to, well, what could the government do in order to...
Exist.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of pages.
Sorry, wouldn't let me pause it. What would the government do in order to keep these files either not in the public domain or changed in a way that means the information, any really damaging information, particularly to Trump and other maybe Republican donors and politicians and whatnot, is kept away from the public? And of course, it's going to be about redaction, and it's going to be about destroying records and so on and so forth. Now, if you remember, and I played this video to you, I think did I do a breaking news update on this or not? I included this. This was a guy who went on 2 dates with an undercover journalist, actually a right-wing undercover journalist, I think it is. So it wasn't like the Democrats trying to do over a Republican here. And this guy had started working for the Department of Justice in the Trump administration. And on a second date to this undercover journalist, he admitted this.
Well, those files do exist.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of pages of files. They'll redact.
So just in case you couldn't hear that, she said those files do exist. And he said, yes, thousands of files exist.
Every Republican or conservative person in those files, leave all the liberal Democratic people in those files.
And I'll read that to you because you might not have heard that. They'll redact every Republican or conservative person in those Epstein files, and they will leave all the liberal Democratic people in those files. That's exactly what Donald Trump has just given the order for, essentially, by saying, I am asking Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate only the Democrats. This man working for the DOJ said, yep, they'll redact every Republican and conservative person in those files, and they'll leave in every liberal and Democrat. This was an undercover bit of footage.
I think they visited that Maxwell person.
Yeah.
And also involved.
She got transferred to a minimum security prison too recently, which is against BOP policy because she's a convicted sex offender. They're offering her something to keep her mouth shut.
What do you do for work here?
I work for the Department of Justice.
Okay.
Been there like 23 years. I'm an analyst.
Oops,
I'll be acting deputy chief of our office for a few months starting next week. I work closely with all the federal law enforcement agencies and the U.S. attorney's offices, the prosecutors and stuff. The thing is, it's interesting because I do deal with so many of the agencies, like the Bureau of Prisons, the Marshal Service, the FBI, U.S. attorney's offices.
So this guy is in the know, right? And he is saying, look, they will redact, and there are thousands of files, and they do exist, and so on and so forth. I mean, that was a huge admission. Then we had this from Mark Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein's brother. This is very well worth taking on board.
What I do want to talk about is I've been recently told The reason they're going to be releasing these things, and the reason for the flip, is that they're sanitizing these files. There's a facility in Winchester, Virginia, where they're scrubbing the files to take Republican names out of it. That's what I was told by a pretty good source. What I do want to talk about.
Okay, so we are relying on a pretty good source that Mark Epstein knows. So our provenance there is somewhat dubious. But Mark Epstein is saying, what I'm aware of is that there's a facility in Winchester, Virginia, where they're scrubbing the files to take the Republican names out. Well, okay, well, he's heard that from a good source. We've just heard from an undercover DOJ operative months ago saying that that was exactly what they were going to do. We know that there were 1,000 FBI agents who were put onto scrubbing out Trump's name from them previously, to the point where, although this is a joke, this is what the Epstein files are going to look like. Effectively redacted, nothing, 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 Jeffrey Epstein, nothing, 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 Bill Clinton. So I'm hoping that there will still be a lot of information, and apparently it is going to be released on a rolling basis. The House Oversight Committee have been releasing these emails from the Epstein estate, and apparently they are going to continue releasing stuff from the Epstein estate. It could come out any moment now or whenever, but there is going to be a rolling release of stuff from them, as far as I understand it. So there is potentially a lot more damaging information to come out. Yeah, so next we come to Chuck Schumer, who, and I love this Chuck Schumer, by the way. This, I didn't think I'd be a big fan of the gerontocracy in the Democratic Party so much as this, but he's pretty forthright here. This is him on a Midas touch.
So the great news is now the House has passed it, the Senate has virtually passed it. It goes to the president's desk. I was going to say we have a lot more work to do. First, who knows how long the House will try to hold it. We should put pressure on Johnson to send it right over to us. Second, the president has said he'll sign it, but who the hell knows with him? He can change his mind on a whim. But third, and maybe most important, and I just had a meeting of 10 senators to discuss this, we got to make sure we get all of the Epstein files, all. They can't fuck around with this. They can't say, oh, we'll give you this.
What was that, Chuck?
Of the Epstein files, all. They can't fuck around with this. They can't say, oh, we'll give you this, but there are legal reasons we can't give you that. And we are going to be pursuing them relentlessly to get everything. Because I don't trust this administration. I don't trust Bondi. I don't trust Kash Patel. I don't trust the president. And they could screw around with this. It'll be all of our jobs to be on them and make sure that we get everything. So the great news is now the House has passed it.
So what I like there is how forthright and up for it he's sounding. I mean, yeah, there's going to be a lot of political gain here. That you could see that this kind of excitement or this kind of fight from Chuck Schumer is more driven by political capitalism rather than the desire to see the best for the survivors and for the victims here. And I get that. But this is what you would want the Democrats to do if you are a fan of the Democrats. Now, somebody already mentioned this earlier, mentioned Melania Trump here. This is fascinating. This is coming from, this is a presentation. You can see the guy on the left. He's actually, this is the screen you see is his PowerPoint screen. He's giving a PowerPoint presentation to the University of Cambridge. He is the author of a biography for Prince Andrew. Very controversial, obviously heavily implicated, has lost now his prince-ness and his titles and everything. But his biographer says this. And once you understand this, you start getting a greater understanding of why Trump is reacting in the ways that possibly he is.
So here we are with him in Mar-a-Lago, as you see with Epstein. Sorry, can you see okay? Epstein, a woman called Gwendolyn Beck, who Andrew took to the island, and Melania. I had various references in my book to Melania Trump. Epstein had actually been her lover before Trump, but Trump didn't like that in the book, so he ordered it to be taken out of the book after about 60,000 copies had been printed. So it seemed to be a pretty pointless gesture, but anyway, our publishers did it, but I keep spreading the word.
So, just to reiterate, in case you missed that, the author of a Prince Andrew biography had plenty of references in the book to Melania Trump being Jeffrey Epstein's lover before she got together with Trump. And we know there are photos of them together and whatnot. You know, there are, that would make sense of the data we do have. And Trump put pressure on the publishers not to include that in the book, but they'd already printed 60,000 copies, and the publishers relented and removed those references. Thank you, Ivan, for a nice cup of tea. Appreciate that. He removed those references to this claim in accordance with the demands of Donald Trump. But this is something that could, you might start seeing more of this being mentioned, like Melania Trump being Jeffrey Epstein's former partner. And there are some very fascinating connections there. And that could also explain why Donald Trump is so, I guess, on edge at the moment, and also just not wanting these files to be published. It just adds yet another reason for Donald Trump to want to keep these files quiet. And you can see that he's struggling, and at the moment, Donald Trump, you can see that he is in all sorts of panic, I would argue, and that is no more obvious than here. Lots of media sources have been talking about this. This was Donald Trump speaking on Air Force One the other night, Friday night, to a female reporter. Now, this alone should be like front page news for days and days and days. Like, Trump should be excoriated for this kind of behavior to a woman. It is bullying behavior that he has, but particularly often to women.
You're going to find out what did he know with respect to Bill Clinton, with respect to the head of Harvard, with respect to all of those people that he knew, including J.P. Morgan chairs. Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead. Go ahead.
Incriminating in the files, Venezuelan, sir.
Quiet, begin.
Venezuelan, sir, you've had a lot.
So the female reporter tries to get a follow-up question, and he says, quiet, quiet, piggy. Quiet, quiet, piggy. And this is the president of the United States just shutting up a female reporter by calling her piggy. And as bad as that is in terms of, or as bad as it should be in terms of optics, I mean, Trump has unfortunately normalized. I mean, he's stood up at a rally and taken the mickey out of a disabled journalist by putting his arms together and simulating someone who is disabled and doing the sounds. Like, he has no compunction being equivalent to a playground school bully, right? So calling a female reporter, telling her to be quiet, quiet, piggy, is part of the course. He's kind of normalized that behavior. I often say, and I think this for anyone who's out there listening, and I doubt anyone is listening as a Trump supporter still. But if you are a Trump supporter, like, I would ask you why you're a Trump supporter. Like, is this the behavior you would teach your children? Would you say, do you know what I want you to be like, child? I want you to take the mickey out of disabled people. And when a woman is speaking, I want you to say, quiet, quiet, piggy. Like, is this the person that you look up to as being the benchmark for a human being, not least the president of the United States? So I have a really sort of very psychological, I guess, approach to, I don't know what approach you would call this, but my argument against people who defend Trump is like, would you teach your children to act like this? Is this the sign of a decent human being? And if you answer yes, then fair enough, mate. You're just not someone I'd probably hang out with. You're not a very nice person yourself if you are going to sit there and justify this kind of behavior. I'm not saying just this. This is one incident of many, many, many that we could list. And he's so childish. The name calling and the purposefully getting people's names wrong. He is, as someone has just said, a despicable, loathsome person. Okay, right. So Then as we're coming on to Mohammed bin Salman as the next part of this, and I know I've already been going on too long. This response to a question on the Epstein files in the White House, his response here, I think, is indicative of the panic.
And people are wise to your hoax. And ABC's, your company, your crappy company, is one of the perpetrators. And I'll tell you something.
So why not just sign it now?
I think the license.
So if you didn't hear what she said, so she'd asked a question about why aren't you, publishing the Epstein files, and he's like, "Yeah, you're crappy ABC," and you can tell he is unnerved here, right? She said, rightly so, why don't you just publish it now? If you listen in the background, that's a question he needs to be answering. Like, if you were properly concerned, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. If you're properly concerned about the Epstein files, why not publish them now?
The perpetrators. And I'll tell you something.
So why not just sign it now?
I think the license should be taken away from ABC, because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. And we have a great commissioner, the chairman, who should look at that, because I think when you come in and when you're 97% negative to Trump, and then Trump wins the election in a landslide, that means obviously your news is not credible, and you're not credible as a reporter. So I've answered you.
So there are all sorts of fallacies there, which I won't go into. The way he draws those conclusions is completely erroneous. But he's sitting next to Mohammed bin Salman, who has greenlit the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, who is an American citizen journalist, who was then, his body was carved up. And that's the guy he invites into the White House and then speaks to journalists about revoking their licenses if they ask difficult questions to him. This is absolutely staggering.
Question. You should go and look at the Democrats who received money from Epstein, who spent their time. Larry Summers was with him all the time. That creep of the fund guy was with him all the time. What's his name? Who? Reid Hoffman. I don't know Reid Hoffman, but I know he spends a lot of money on the radical left. Reid Hoffman, in my opinion, should be under investigation.
He's just said, I know nothing about him other than he gives money to the radical left, so he should be under investigation. But I know nothing about him. All he does is tries to investigate his political opponents. He is weaponizing the DOJ. He's revoking the licenses, or he certainly wants to revoke the licenses of any news outlets that are remotely critical of him. This is the activity of a dictatorship. He is functioning little different to Mohammed bin Salman, who's sitting next to him.
It's a sleazebag. And those are the people.
You just said you don't know him. You called him a sleazebag.
But they don't get any press. They don't get any news. And you're not after the radical left because you're a radical left network. But I think the way you ask a question with the anger and the meanness is terrible. You ought to go back and learn how to be a reporter. No more questions from you.
Listen to that. That's a minute that he's just spent going to town on this reporter for asking just a question about the Epstein files. So it shows you how on edge he is about the Epstein files, how much of a dictator he really is, how much he wants to shut down any critical evaluation and journalism of him, how much he wants to be just like Mohammed bin Salman, and maybe greenlight the murder of that journalist, and maybe see her body get cut up and disposed of. Absolutely incredible. Right, the last one, this is my segue onto the Mohammed bin Salman section. This is deeply worrying. Now, remember, we've seen the same in the Department of Defense, where you've got JAGs have been purged. So these military lawyers have been got rid of. You've got 4-star generals. You've got anyone who's remotely not on board with the Trumpian agenda purged from the Department of Defense. But now we are hearing the sheer scale of the purging in the Department of Justice. So one thing, one of the pillars of fascism is going to be the weaponization of your legal, and that can be both law enforcement and your jurisprudence. If you are getting that in your pocket, that is one major step on the way to fascism. Literally fascism. Rory Stewart was talking about, they've just done a video, The Rest is Politics, on whether the US is approaching fascism. I've done several videos on this, looking at the technical details of what fascism is and what the US is doing in order to check those boxes for whether it qualifies as on the way to or being some kind of fascistic state at the moment. And Rory Stewart said, look, I don't like using the word fascism because people then go, well, it's not Hitler. You don't have people walking around in brown shirts. And this is a problem. People think fascism has to be 1930s Hitlerian brown shirts activities. No, modern fascism looks somewhat different. It looks different, but it has very many of the same flavors, obviously, because I would argue it is fascism. So Rory Stewart calls it proto-fascism. Okay, fair enough. If you want to change the word just so people don't get all upset that you're comparing, this state to that state, I would just call it fascism, and I would just say as defined by these tenets. But anyway, this is what's happened with the Department of Justice.
With me now, a federal prosecutor who quit over the decision to dismiss the case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams, Ryan Croswell. How are you seeing the scope, the speed in which this is all taking place? Of course, we remember you left your job because of the way in which the decision to dismiss a case against Mayor Eric Adams. How does this all play for you?
Laura, it's a continuation of the abuse of power I witnessed firsthand, which led me to leave the job that I love and run for Congress here in Pennsylvania. I think this is unprecedented in American history. You have a president who put out an enemies list, essentially, then prevailed upon his attorney general to pursue one of the people on that list, which he did. And now you have the attorney general saying that there'll be more to come. And I think the most galling part about all this was that Pam Bondi also said no one's above the law, except we know that's not true. Eric Adams is above the law. Tom Homan is above the law. Apparently anybody in the Epstein files is above the law. And really anyone who's a friend of Donald Trump's is above the law. At the same time,
remember, Tom Homan took a $50,000 bribe, and they're not investigating it.
That they're pursuing these charges against James Comey. I have no doubt that he will not be convicted.
Really? Why are you so sure?
Because of this.
So anyway, a point being that the New York Times has confirmed the worst, that more than 200 career Department of Justice attorneys have been fired. So 200 DOJ lawyers have been fired, and thousands more have chosen to resign. So the DOJ is suddenly purged of at least several thousand lawyers who evidently are not happy with going along with what Trump wants and his administration wants to do. The problem is they will be replaced by lawyers who are happy to do so. And suddenly you get a Department of Justice that is in the pocket of the White House. This is truly scary stuff. 200 fired, thousands resigning in protest. Why? Because prosecutors were pushed to drop cases, chase evidence that didn't exist, and abandon real threats. Trump has corrupted the Department of Justice, is the claim there. Right. Okay. Now we're going to go back to the White House, and this is Mohammed bin Salman and Trump being asked about Jamal Khashoggi, the American journalist who was murdered, greenlit by MBS himself.
He's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
It's just you ask, Mr. President.
So he then stops in and said, actually, no, I'm going to answer. You don't need to speak on my behalf, mate. Now, Trump has just slagged off Khashoggi, right? Said, well, he's controversial. Some people didn't like him. Oh, that's all right. That's okay. An American journalist to be murdered. When you understand what's actually happened in the past between Trump and MBS here, and how actually Trump has no desire for there to be justice with regard to Jamal Khashoggi. It is absolutely outrageous. Now, let's look in a bit more detail before we go back to a larger clip of that. John Favreau from Pod Save America says, imagine your friend or family was brutally murdered by a foreign government and you hear the president of the United States say shit like that. Shit like this as he sits next to the perpetrator and praises him. So Trump, sitting next to MBS in the Oval Office, says Khashoggi was extremely controversial and that a lot of people didn't like that gentleman. He chides a reporter for embarrassing MBS by asking about it. Trump earlier calls MBS an extremely respected man. I mean, he's effectively a dictator, right? Bob Woodward then says, I pressed Trump on MBS's role in the Khashoggi killing during a tape-recorded interview on January the 22nd, 2020. Quote, I've gotten involved very much, Trump said. I know everything about the whole situation. Of course, Trump knows everything about everything. But Trump is talking about the whole Khashoggi situation. This is back in 2020. So what happened, sir? I asked. Quote, I saved his ass, Trump said. That's what happened. Saved whose ass? Answer, Trump answers, MBS. So the ass he saves isn't Jamal Khashoggi's, clearly not. He's been murdered. He saves Mohammed bin Salman's ass. Trump said, they were coming down on him very strongly, but I was able to get Congress to leave him alone. I was able to get them to stop. You know, I'm very friendly with those guys. And by those guys, we're talking about the dictatorial monarchy of a repressive regime. Again, I go back to anyone who supports Trump and say, is he the sort of guy that you would want your child to be? You know, someone that allows murderers to continue murdering and get off the hook. Is that who you would teach your child to be? If you are, as I go back to this, and I know some people say I've got Trump derangement syndrome, but the people who claim I've got Trump derangement syndrome are themselves idiots. Like, if you don't recognize a morally reprehensible human being, then you have a dubious moral compass yourself. You have Trump deification syndrome. You would like to put, or do put, Trump on a godlike pedestal. You have a TDS of your own, and it's far more problematic than mine. So, this is what Trump said. They were coming down on him very strongly, but I was able to get Congress to leave him alone. I was able to get them to stop. You know, I'm very friendly with those guys. Which guys? The Saudis? Congress. I'm very friendly with Congress. So not only is he friendly with MBS and getting him off the hook, he knows everything about those guys. They were coming down on him very strongly, but he's very, very friendly with Congress. Okay, well, I wonder whether that is truly the case. I think Congress are somewhat scared of you, Republican Congress, that is. I wouldn't call it friendship. And then let's add a little bit more to this. This is Eugene Vindman, who is now in Congress himself, and he was working for, I forget in which capacity, but he has actually listened to phone calls between Trump and Mohammed bin Salman. And he says he obviously can't talk about them, but he says they need to be released.
Mr. Speaker, given the president's disturbing and counterfactual defense of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman today, I feel compelled to speak up on behalf of Mr. Khashoggi and his family and the American people. During my tenure on Trump's White House National Security Council staff, I reviewed many of Trump's calls with foreign leaders. Of all the calls I reviewed, 2 stood out as the most problematic. The first, we all know, it was between President Trump and President Zelensky, which resulted in President Trump's first impeachment. The second was between President Trump and Mohammed bin Salman. After the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, I reviewed a call between the president and the Saudi Crown Prince. The American people and the Khashoggi family deserve to know what was said on that call. If history is any guide, the receipts will be shocking. I call on the president to release that transcript. And honestly, does anyone believe that the Zelensky call was the only problematic conversation Donald Trump had with a foreign leader? Mr. Speaker.
Absolutely fascinating there. And interesting that I've not heard this, but Cheryl, what he says, the audio tapes were horrific. Khashoggi screaming while being dismembered by a chainsaw. I've not heard that, and nor would I want to hear that, but it does give you a little bit of an insight into what an horrific crime that was and how Donald Trump is allowing the perpetrators to get off the hook. Now, we're going to start sort of moving on. Well, we're not moving on. This is the natural progression of the conversation, which is if you start purging the Department of Justice, if you start purging your Department of Defense and the FBI and the CIA, as we've heard, all of these departments, all of these institutions in the United States have been purged to greater or lesser degrees. You are going to start getting to a point where your own intelligence is being affected, as in your intelligence gathering. As Alex Younger here, who's a former MI6 chief, so foreign intelligence chief of the British. I love Alex Younger. He's spot on with everything I hear him say. Here he's on Newsnight talking about the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, but then the purging of people who are, so we had Tulsi Gabbard wanted a report on Venezuela. The two people who produced a report didn't conclude what she wanted. So rather than changing policy to adapt policy to the facts of the conclusions of a report from your intelligence services, she fired the authors and then wanted just another conclusion. You start doing that over and over and over. You get to a point where you can't trust your intelligence services anymore, and you will have an intelligence failure. This is what Younger here says.
Well, I think that was a worry on a couple of levels, actually. I think closing down a journalist asking a legitimate question is another issue in this contested area of free speech that I think we're all increasingly concerned about. And then I worry a lot about the dismissal of intelligence assessments, or indeed previously the sacking of intelligence officials who've spoken truth to power, what that does to the integrity of the whole machine. Because speaking as an intelligence officer, I can tell you it takes some courage to talk to the head of state and tell them things they don't want to know. And he's making that more and more difficult. And the result of that is he's increasing the likelihood of an intelligence failure in the future.
Why does that increase the likelihood of a failure?
Because ultimately people, however well-intentioned they are and honourable and truthful, are going to be deterred from telling the president what he doesn't want to hear. Right. And that's going to lead to bad decisions, as it has in the past.
Yeah.
Pretty spot on. Now, I know my videos, these live ones, are long, probably overly long, but I do really try hard to create a narrative that goes through this. Not really a narrative, that sounds wrong, but to make everything link together, because I think it's really important to understand how everything connects. And I also, like to bring a lot of different sources in as well. So I do apologize that they're often overly long, but such is the way of it. Now, I want to also play the entirety of this interaction.
Is it appropriate, Mr. President, for your family to be doing business in Saudi Arabia while you're president? Is that a conflict of interest? And
so just to give you the context here, this is ABC again. ABC he's already gone to town on ABC, which I think was for the Epstein question. And here, I presume, is another ABC journalist. But yeah, or maybe the Epstein one came later. But anyway.
Mr. President, for your family to be doing business in Saudi Arabia while you're president, is that a conflict of interest? And Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
I love this because she's being a proper bloody journalist. It's like America, no offense to my American friends, but what Trump has done is he's emasculating the American press corps to the point where they can't ask difficult questions, because as soon as you ask a difficult question, he revokes your license and you're not allowed back in the White House. She won't be allowed back in the White House now. What you need is every single journalist to start asking difficult questions and being really super tough on Trump until there's nothing left. But then, it's just so difficult, isn't it? Anyway, good on her.
Furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news. ABC fake news. One of the worst in the business. But I'll answer your question.
Thank you.
I have nothing to do with the family business. I have left, and when I've devoted 100% of my energy. What my family does is fine.
They do business all over. They've done very little with Saudi Arabia, actually. I'm sure they could do a lot. As far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
Okay, just you ask, Mr. President, if you allow me to answer. You know, I feel painful about, you know, the families of 9/11 in America, but, you know, we have to focus on reality. Reality based on CIA documents and based on a lot of documents that Osama bin Laden, he used Saudi people in that event for one main purpose, is to destroy this relation, to destroy the American-Saudi relation. That's the purpose of 9/11. About the journalists, it's really painful to hear, you know, anyone that been losing his life for, you know, no real purpose or not in a legal way, and it's been painful for us in Saudi Arabia. We've did all the right steps of investigation, etc., in Saudi Arabia, and we've improved our system to be sure that nothing happened like that, and it's painful and it's a huge mistake, and we are doing our best that this doesn't happen again.
Seems absolute, you know, nonsense to me. I mean, he's
nothing new.
Absolutely involved in that. I love what Anderson Cooper said here.
With the president next to an absolute ruler, something just.
Will, sorry, I'll play it again. I love a bit of Anderson Cooper here.
Again, there's no such thing as press freedom in Saudi Arabia. According to the group Freedom House, the kingdom scores a 0 out of 4 in that category. And with its own open threat against ABC, the president certainly must have made his guests feel right at home on that front, which, keep them honest, is nothing new. Put the president next to an absolute ruler, something just happens, whether it's trashing a pillar of American freedom or trashing America's intelligence community when standing next to Vladimir Putin, as he did in 2018. Again, there's
perfectly put by Anderson Cooper here, which is, you know, you put him next to a dictator and something happens and he turns into a dictator himself and then threatens to get rid of ABC's license, so on and so forth. Is it right for your family to be doing business in Saudi Arabia while this happens? And connecting, you know, some people have been saying that here he's talking about, I don't know, where if it's Zoran Mamdani, the New York mayor that's just been voted in. And because, you know, he's a Muslim, even though he's a super liberal Muslim, but, you know, you're going to get some kind of scenario that's, you know, they blow it out of all proportion. And here he is inviting Mohammed bin Salman and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and the connections between 9/11 and then the murder of an American journalist. And Trump's fine with it. It's just a complete double standards. It's absolutely outrageous. I do love this as well from Jake Tapper, another CNN anchor here, who is brilliant in a little snide comment he throws in here. I love.
White House, we're standing by to see the president and First Lady greet Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Presumably he's washed the blood off his hands.
Oh, so this is before it all happened. They're going to meet Mohammed bin Salman. Presumably he's washed the blood off his hands.
Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, presumably he's washed the blood off his hands, whom they are hosting for a lavish dinner. The pomp and circumstance that we're seeing, along with the warmth and the praise and the denial of Saudi Arabia's actual record, is something more typical of a visit from an allied Western democracy instead of a monarchy with a checkered human rights record. The visit to the U.S. marks the very first for MBS since the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who worked for the Washington Post 7 years ago. Earlier today, President Trump even defended the Crown Prince when he was pressed about his murder.
Incredible stuff. Okay, so David Yelland here, who was he formerly, well, anyway, he's associated with the BBC, are the editors who side with Trump's $5 billion lawsuit on, you know, against the BBC. Are the editors who side with Trump's $5 billion war on the BBC journalism going to side with a relaxed attitude to the murder and clinical dismemberment of the Washington Post journalist? Like, honestly, like, it's incredible. And you got people like GB News going to town on this, being so obsequious towards Donald Trump and then having a go at the BBC. Everyone here in the Telegraph and the Mail and the Express and GB News, all having a go at the BBC and all obsequiously fawning over Trump. Hang on, guys. Like, you do realize that Trump is protecting the murder of one of your colleagues, journalist for the Washington Post, American citizen, killed and dismembered on the orders of Mohammed bin Salman. And now this guy is being protected by Donald Trump. You know, have a think, guys. Have a think. Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems in the UK, says there's a direct line between Donald Trump trying to destroy the BBC and him excusing the brutal murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Trump hates the independent free press, yes. Whether in the US, Saudi Arabia, or the UK, we will always defend it. Yeah, absolutely. And this is just play you another bit of Donald Trump just fawning over Saudi Arabia.
Well, look, I love the country of Saudi Arabia. I know the people very well.
What do you mean, the people? What do you love about Saudi Arabia? How much do you know about Saudi Arabia? Do you love the human rights abuses? I know you've got to be diplomatic, but you just had the South African president over and you went to town on white genocide. You had Zelensky over and you went to town on him. Saudi Arabia, hey, I love you guys. You guys are my favorite. Hey, I love dismembering journalists. Woo! Honestly, Trump, you are horrific.
Well, look, I love the country of Saudi Arabia. I know the people very well. The level of treatment that we go when we go to Saudi Arabia is something that is incredible. And the people like us, and I think they really like America, especially when I'm president. I mean, I don't think they liked America so much maybe for 4 years recently. I think Obama treated Saudi Arabia very, very badly, as you know. And I think Biden didn't have any idea where the hell he was. But I don't think Biden knew the difference.
Oh, shut up, man. I'm not going to play it to you, but there's a really cringe bit where he tries to get Mohammed bin Salman to say that Trump is the best president, and he doesn't do it, and it's brilliant. And then he tries to do this whole fist bump, shaky hands thing, and it's really, really cringe. But I love the fact that Mohammed bin Salman didn't come through on that one. It was delightful. Anyway, so yes, correction. I love Saudi Arabian money. He loves the oil money. Yes, all correct. Absolutely. Okay. So we are now going to go on to the very final thing here, which is redistricting. So what I wanted, I know doesn't seem to be much of a segue there, much of a connection, but Epstein, I think his reactions, not so much Mohammed bin Salman being there himself and the stuff to do with Saudi Arabia, but Trump's reactions there, I think indicate that we've reached an inflection point. And I am wondering whether, and I talked about this with you before, whether Trump's currency now is devaluing, and it will necessarily devalue because he's a lame duck president. And if you accept that he probably won't rule after 2028, although that is up for contention, that is up for debate. But assuming that he won't successfully, pull the wool over the entire population of the United States in kind of redefining the Constitution, let's assume that he won't rule after 2028. He's a lame duck president, and they need to look. The Republicans are looking at his polls. If you look at his polls at the moment, I wonder if I saw a really good one earlier on his disapproval rating, and it is one direction only, really. So people are going to be looking at and thinking, well, do we get behind him? Do we continue to get behind him? Is this going to be useful for me to continue to have my job as a lawmaker, so on and so forth? So yeah, I'm just trying to see if I can find. No, I can't find it. There's a really clear graph that showed his disapproval going down and down and down. Anyway, you get the point that his currency is devaluing, I'm just looking final one here. Sorry, I know it's not so interesting for you to see me search for stuff online that I can't find. Anyway, nonetheless, you get the point. So we've got his reaction to the interview, to the questions in the interview with, or the chat with Mohammed bin Salman. You've got the Epstein files disaster that could see him really badly implicated. And if he tries to do this funky thing of stopping the files being released by having an open investigation, then that's going to hurt him as well. I think Trump is in a no-win situation at the moment. And that's going to distract away from what he wants to be concentrating on, which are all the 57 wars that he's solved in the last 3.5 hours. And all the amazing things that he's done that should get him the Nobel Peace Prize, an Oscar, should get an extra Scouts badge, and 12 out of 10 for his homework. So, Trump is just amazing, and he wants you to focus on that. And the Epstein files will stop that from happening. So he's panicking. Things are looking bad. But then he's being attacked from all different sides at the moment in a good way. Like these are all, the Epstein files should be out there. He shouldn't be platforming Mohammed bin Salman. He shouldn't be shutting down tough questions. Like, it's all right that this stuff is happening. And now you've got the redistricting issue. So just to remind people, there's something called gerrymandering, and usually gerrymandering happens at a different time to now. So it's happening in the middle of censuses, 2 censuses. So 2020, 2030 will be the American census. That's when you do redistricting, because you find out, oh, people live here, not there. Oh, this is, and so that's the time that you're supposed to do redistricting. He's doing it right in the middle. And the reason he's doing that is because he wants people to find, in fact, I'm going to, I know many of you will understand this, but I think there's a really good, on the Wikipedia website, there's a really good explanation of why how gerrymandering works. So it's this here. So you have, in this case, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So 50 seats here. And you've got, 20 yellow seats and 30 blue seats. So really, you should have, or voters, you should have, a proportional representation in this district. You would have 2 yellow lawmakers and 3 blue lawmakers, and whatever it is, in a ratio of 2 to 3. And if you went straight across the lines here, as you can see in the middle one at the top, you get that kind of fairness. That would be representative in a certain way. But actually, what happens? No, you don't, because if you have 5 districts set out in this manner, straight across from left to right there, then actually you get no district in which yellow win. So that they have 2 out of 5 voters are yellow, but no districts, because of first past the post, in this case, have someone who is of the yellow party. Then you can move your districts around and change the borders. So in this one here, it's now a yellow district, that's now a yellow district, and that's now a yellow district. So even though they only have 2/5 of the vote, you can change the borders around with this one on the top right. So they actually get 3 seats, and the blues only get 2 seats. So you can manipulate the borders in such a way that the yellows can end up with a majority of, in this case, Congress people in the House of Representatives, by jiggling the borders around. And you can move your district borders around in all these different ways to give you different outcomes that do not represent the vote share in the district as a whole, or in the state as a whole. So hopefully that gives you an understanding of how redistricting works, or gerrymandering as it's called. Now, what happened was, Donald Trump said, right, we're going to get tanked in the midterm elections in 2026, and we will lose the House of Representatives to the Democrats. And at the moment, the polls are looking bad. Even though I keep coming out and saying I'm the most popular president ever, the polls are looking bad. So what we need to do is redistrict in a way, right in the middle of two censuses. So it's a time that shouldn't happen. I want you, and he said to Texas, I want you to go and find me 5 extra Republican representatives. And so Texas then went and redrew a bunch of maps. The Democrats are looking at this, and Gavin Newsom, particularly from California, he said, hang on, you can't do this. You shouldn't be doing this. This is genuinely not, particularly democratic. If you do this, we're going to do this in California, except the way that California did it is he said, but if we do that, I'm going to put it to the vote first. So during the Tuesday elections a couple of weeks ago, Gavin Newsom put to the vote in California that they can, do you want to vote for Proposition 50, which would redistrict the California? And there we would be able to find more Democrats out of redistricting than Republicans. But we're only doing that because they've done it over there, right? Do you understand this? Yes, at least you're going to vote for it. But we're in Texas, they didn't do a vote for it. We're just going to redraw the maps. And then you start seeing this kind of battle emerging where these different states are like, well, we're going to redraw the maps. And Trump is going to these states and say, you need to go and redistrict. You need to redistrict. You need to redistrict. So all these different states are now in this process of deciding whether they're going to redistrict. And you've got this fight, which if it all went the way that it would be expected, then the Republicans, because they control more states, and it's the states that get to redistrict the maps, actually the Republicans would come out winning that battle. But if the Democrats fight back, at least they're not like rolling over and it be an absolute massacre. So they will gain some seats in California. And people were saying, look, we understand gerrymandering is kind of wrong. It's not illegal, but it's wrong. And it is, not representative. So we understand that in fact, the Democrats during the Biden administration tried to put forward a bill that all mapping redistricting should be done by independent organizations that are not partisan, and not a single Republican voted for it, so it didn't get through. So the Republicans have voted against fairness here. So the Democrats said, look, we tried to do this the fair way. If we don't do anything, we are going to get absolutely pasted. So we need to fight fire with fire. We know that redistricting is wrong here, but let's ask the people if we should do it in California. Yep, okay, and we're going to do it. So Gavin Newsom is like, I'm going to fight. I know it's not great, but we did try to get it through properly through Congress previously. So the Democrats have the higher moral ground here. I'm sorry, it's just the case that the Democrats have the higher moral ground. Anyway, so they're going through this redistricting battle, starting with Texas, where Texas have gone and redrawn their maps. Then California's then retaliating. Well, all of that leads to where we are here, which is the Associated Press breaking. Federal judges have blocked Texas from using redrawn congressional maps that would boost the GOP in the 2026 midterm elections. Oh my goodness. So Gavin Newsom comes out and says Donald Trump and Greg Abbott, who is from Texas, played with fire, got burned, and democracy won. This ruling is a win for Texas and for every American who fights for free and fair elections. What you might have now, bearing in mind this is going to be challenged in appeal, and now we are hearing that actually the Attorney General Pam Bondi has got involved. We strongly disagree with today's district ruling on Texas's redistricting map. Texas's map was drawn the right way for the right reasons. Well, that's absolute BS. We look forward to Texas's victory at the Supreme Court. So they're obviously going to take this as high as the Supreme Court. And it might well still get through. But the worst case scenario for the Republicans is they don't get their Texas map through, which is the one that gets them the most seats. The Democrats get their map through in California, which has got a legal basis for it, a democratic basis for it. Sorry, not legal, democratic basis for it. And actually, then you start hearing about what's going on elsewhere. So Indiana have now refused, I think the state Senate has refused to vote on redistricting. So Indiana, and that could be Mike Pence, the former vice president, starting to apparently might be pulling some strings as a bit of revenge on Donald Trump, so that he's got some state senators in his pocket and saying, nope, we're not going to redistrict. We need Donald Trump to be burnt here. And also, even if Texas do get their maps redistricted, there are some people saying that at the moment, and it's difficult to predict November 2026, there are people saying at the moment, the feeling is so strong against the Republicans or against Donald Trump that even if they do redistrict, they could still lose some of these districts that they think are going to be absolutely in the bag. So it's fascinating stuff going on. So if you think about where Trump is at the moment, he's going to be feeling attacked from all sides in a way that he bloody well should do. This is how Fox News is reporting it.
Fox News alert in Texas, where a federal court has blocked the state's brand new congressional map set to go into effect for the 2026 midterms. The ruling means that Texas needs to stick with the congressional maps that were passed in 2021. Judge Jeffrey Brown, a Trump appointee, says of the new maps, quote, "It was much more than just politics. Substantial evidence shows that Texas racially gerrymandered the 2025 map."
So what often happens is they look at how they draw the maps, and when you get all these kind of different mapping like configurations, I mean, this is just very simple geometrics, but when you look at some of these maps, absolutely extraordinary shapes that you get. What Texas were doing were drawing the lines around, where Latino people were living, particularly Black and Latino places. So what they kind of want to do is create rather than spread significant Democrat votes into a number of districts where they can have an effect on, say, 3 districts. If we draw one district that's entirely Democrat, right? So yeah, we'll lose that district, but we won't lose the other 2. So we gain these. So that's kind of thing. One of the ways they do it. So they've been drawing these districts, and the judges have said 2-1 that you've just drawn this racially, that there's racial gerrymandering going on, which is against the law. So yeah, anyway, yeah, and by the way, yeah, this is a really good point. Thank you, Grunge Thing, that's pointed this out. I was wondering this, but I couldn't remember. If Texas is stopped, the Californian version is automatically annulled. Now, the great thing about the Californian version, like I said, honestly, the Democrats do have higher ground here. Even if you're a Republican supporter, in terms of what Gavin Newsom has done, there are 2 things he's done. He's connected, as mentioned by Grunching. Thanks, Ronnie. The gerrymandering in California is contingent upon Texas, which is good. It's like, if you don't do it, then we don't do it. But also, even if they did do it, it is limited in time. And I can't remember what the term limit is, or not term limit, but the gerrymandering, the districts then will get independently looked at after a certain amount of years. So it's not like forever. So it's this understanding that we're doing this because we feel we have to. But if you guys don't do it, we won't do it. And also, it doesn't last forever. It's not a permanent thing. So again, the Democrats trying to, if they are going to fight fire with fire, make sure that the fire isn't too controversial. So yeah, now I'm going to finally leave you with this before I get to, I don't know if there are any comments that are worth looking at. Well, of course, they're all worth looking at, but I just want to then say, look, Trump is up against a number of things, and that's why I think you're seeing him panicking. Yeah, I said redistricting was the last thing, but one other thing that's worth mentioning is the economy. So he's going back. He's already admitted that the tariffs are inflationary, and he's saying, I'm going to lower costs on beef and coffee and all these things because I want to lower prices. Oh, right. So you do now admit that inflation was caused because tariffs are put on, because if you're saying now the price is going to be lowered if I take tariffs off, then there is a price tariff causal connection there. So people then saying, well, Trump, you were lying then to us previously. So he's getting under a lot of pressure because of tariffs and the economy in general. Now, here is Hassett, who is one of Kevin Hassett, who is Trump's economic council director, talking about unemployment rates. We're going to be talking about manufacturing numbers in a second as well. So Hassett says this, and there is just the use of the word concoct here is quite revealing.
And the household survey wasn't conducted.
Oh, what I'm not even showing this to you. So let's start that again. So this is Kevin Hassett on Fox
And the
News.
household survey wasn't conducted in October. So we're going to get half the employment report. We'll get the jobs part, but we won't get the unemployment rate. And that'll just be for 1 month. But yeah, it is true that we probably will maybe be able to concoct something, but we'll never actually know for sure what the unemployment rate was in October.
So it's okay. We're going to concoct something. Because we can't get the numbers out because, hey, you know, the labor statistics and blah, blah, blah. It's all right. We'll concoct something. You don't say concoct. I mean, that's good. That gives a really big implication that you're going to pull numbers out of your ass. Okay, so Goldman Sachs has said that the US has lost 50,000 jobs last month, which is why Trump's refusing to release the jobs and inflation reports. They don't want you to see how bad the economy really is, but everyone knows. So remember, Trump 1.0, he said, we're going to stop testing for COVID. Why? Because the more we test, the more we find out people have got COVID. I don't like bad news. So rather than do anything about COVID and try and get it under control, I am going to just not have reports on it. We're not going to test for COVID, so we don't know if people have got it or not. And look, the numbers have come down. Okay, so that kind of thinking that Trump showed you in Trump 1.0 is being applied here, which is, well, if you don't know about the numbers, then it's all right. We can concoct them. We can pull them out of our arse. Goldman Sachs says the US lost 50,000 jobs last month, but Trump is refusing to release the jobs and inflation's report. Now, he's also said to companies, you don't need to report your information quarterly, only 6 monthly. So the data is becoming less and less granular. Why would you do that? And you would only do that, I would think, if you just didn't want the data to be too public and too frequent, because the data is uncomfortable for you. They don't want you seeing how bad the economy really is, but everybody knows. Okay, worth looking in a little bit of detail into this. There's no jobs report today, but here's what private data is telling us about the labor market. It says, can't remember who this was, Business Insider. So the government shutdown means another missed jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Recent reports from Indeed, LinkedIn, and others show the state of the jobs market in October. Announced job cuts climbed, job postings have cooled, and small business hiring has slowed. Now, the ADP payroll data is private data. The US added 42,000 private sector jobs in October after falling in the previous 2 months, despite beating the 32,000 consensus. Nella Richardson, the chief economist at ADP, said in the news release that hiring was modest. Most of the net growth came from large companies with at least 500 employees. Job growth was mixed by industry. Trade, transportation, and utilities together added 47,000 jobs. Employment dipped in information, manufacturing, professional and business services, and leisure and hospitality. But then this is the interesting one. Challenger Gray and Christmas. So this is another organization, found that announced job cuts from US-based employers skyrocketed over the month to the highest October level since 2003, increasing from 54,064 to 153,074 this past October. Last month's gain means over 1 million announced cuts so far this year, more than the roughly 761,000 cuts for the entire previous year. Some industries are correcting after the hiring boom of the pandemic, but this comes as AI adoption, softening consumer and corporate spending, and rising costs drive belt tightening and hiring freezes. So AI plus rising costs due to tariffs, among other things. This is also, the Economic Times talked about this, and the Challenger Gray and Christmas. So the weakness extends beyond October as more than 1 million jobs have been cut so far this year, up 65% from last year, as per Challenger Gray and Thomas. Yes, so job openings hit the lowest level since 2021, Indeed reports. Goldman Sachs forecast largest US drop since jobs drop since 2020. And private hiring stalls despite early October growth. So early October looked better than late October, so on and so forth. So on and so forth. And then, you get data like this. Trump is squandering the reindustrialization that Biden did through the CHIPS Act, the Chips and Science Act, and so on and so forth. So here we have US construction of factories and other manufacturing structures inched down to the lowest levels in nearly 2 years. In official data released the other day, construction is roughly down 8.6% over the last year as CHIPS Act projects complete and tariffs weigh on manufacturing investment. And there you go. And then you have this absolutely stunning. I'm going to play you this before we finish. This was, in my opinion, absolutely stunning. So then talking about, well, actually, we're trying to get rid of, so part of the problem might be economically, is that they are getting rid of so many brown-skinned people through the ICE deportations. And of course, those are oftentimes your lower skilled workers, that then mean that you have a labor shortage, and that pushes labor costs up as you're trying to attract more people in from a smaller pool. And that is inflationary. So that's going to hurt as well. Now, the other issue was the trade war with China meant that there were suddenly going to be no Chinese students coming to American universities. He's also having to go at American universities. But they have then complained to him that, look, if you stop Chinese students coming, then we're gonna collapse. The education industry will collapse. So then he turned around and said, actually, we're going to allow 600,000 Chinese students in, to which the people who are really arguing, like Stephen Miller and the kind of anti-migrant Republican base, as some of them are, were pretty angry with this. And this is his reaction to, well, this is an explanation here to Laura Ingraham.
Does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
We have plenty of talented people
no,
here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented.
Honestly, Laura Ingraham, she did this twice in this interview. One where he said that China was, maybe it's this part actually, where he says China's better than France. But here he's talking about how oh no, this is H-1B visa. This wasn't Chinese student. So the Chinese student part of this interview was where he said, we're getting 600,000 people in from China. She said, well, do we want them from China? They steal our intellectual property. They do this. And he said, well, yeah. She said, well, what about the French? He said, well, they're better than the French. So Trump, in that part of the interview, was saying that essentially European allies sit below China, but you're the one that's just gone to a trade war with China. You're saying China the enemy. You've got China hawks saying China the big enemy of the United States at the moment. And now you said, but actually France are way worse. You know, so that was a political faux pas, you could argue. And this is the H-1B visas, which is then getting people in. So sorry, this is different. So if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with foreign workers. He said, I agree, but you also have to bring in the talent.
The country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
We have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
The dismissal of we have plenty of talent. Now, he may be technically correct with, like, actually, we don't have the talent here for this particular sector, and that's why we need people in from this country, like South Korea, to work in these factories to train people up, because they've got the talent in terms of that very technical area. Okay, you can make an argument for that, but his dismissal here is, no, we don't. No, we don't have the talent. No, we don't. Laura Ingraham, who is like super America first, kind of almost ultra nationalist, has just been put down by Trump dismissively by trying to stand up, say, hang on, we've got workers in the United States that have talent. No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
We have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles.
Does that mean that?
So he's sort of talking about the particular, but the way he couches that response is so dismissive and so against this idea that, hey, we've got great American, it's all about, he's been spending the last 10 months talking about we're putting tariffs on because we want to onshore the manufacturing. And then another point in time, He's saying we can't do that because we need the talent from abroad. So even if we do onshore the manufacturing, we're going to have to just bring in loads of immigrants. But aren't you just spending the whole time trying to get rid of immigrants? Yeah, but I'm so confused. Yep, whiplash. It's whiplash time. Absolutely incredible. Anyway, final thing is here. You see the Resolute desk. Apparently that's no longer in the Oval Office. It's now in Mar-a-Lago. Trump announced in February 2025 that he temporarily removed the Resolute desk from the Oval Office and installed a C&O desk in its place, which was previously used by President George H.W. Bush. He explained that the desks are being swapped because the Resolute desk needed to be, quote, lightly refurbished. Now, 9 months later, it's been spotted in a picture taken from inside Mar-a-Lago. He just freaking steals stuff. Absolutely outrageous. Anyway, there you go. So that is hopefully a bit of a romp through American politics to give you a sense that all is not going to plan for Donald Trump as much as he would like it at the moment. And I think if things continue to go in this direction, underwritten by poor economic data, which is not going to improve unless he just sorts out the tariffs, and, you know, if you're going to go down the massive deportation route, that's going to be inflationary. Tariffs are inflationary. Trade wars are inflationary. You are going to struggle to get on top of people's cost of living issues, and you will be punished at the November 2026 midterm election ballot boxes if that's the case. And if you can't disentangle yourself from the Jeffrey Epstein issue, and if you keep going after the press, and if you keep doing things that look more and more dictatorial, you might well get more and more pushback certainly from your moderates, certainly from your independents and your Democrats, and each passing month you're going to lose more and more Republicans, because that's what the data is showing. The data is showing that your popularity is going down and down and down at the moment, and you would need to reverse that. And at the moment, you're not going the right way. So the question is, well, what are the Epstein files going to show? Could this be the end of Trump? And that's a question I don't know, because he is Teflon Trump. So please feed me poop says, given the latest, what are your odds on 1, Trump is done, 2, Trump is a lame duck? He is a lame duck, but it's how much of a stranglehold he has on Republican lawmakers, or will they? I think they're going to start feeling more and more. What the discharge petition has done has given a permission structure. I said this the other day, given a permission structure for Republicans to diverge from the White House diktats. You will have senators and representatives who will go, actually, I'm okay with crossing the aisle here to vote in favor of this bill and not in line with what Trump has said, because actually, you know, we've seen Thomas Massie, what he's done. We've done this with the discharge petition. I feel emboldened. So I think you will get a sense that people are going to be looking beyond Trump, and he is that kind of lame duck. But Trump also could be fine. He has an amazing propensity to get through scandals that would destroy other politicians and other leaders. Like, Trump should have been out of government 6 months ago, in my opinion. The Epstein scandal should have ended him already. Any other leader, other than in a pure dictatorship, would have been ended. In any other democracy, it would have been game over. But he's still there. So I don't know. Right. So we have Cheryl saying Trump might not realize he was being filmed and blackmailed by Epstein initially, and his information being sold to the Russians, allegedly. So there are lots of connections that could be made to the Russians through those released emails that actually, you know, Jeffrey Epstein was saying to the Russians, look, you know, I can advise you on how to handle Trump, which it might be sort of French for I've got stuff on Trump if you want it. Because at the end of the day, he is on record saying that I'm the only guy that can take Trump down. And then he died. Thank you, Johnny Nevergard from Norway. Really appreciate that. Thanks for your support, mate. Who's popping? Thank you. How does one procure a brew bringer? I'm not sure what that means, but thank you for your support, Who's popping. And Squinton, thank you for your tireless efforts. Sometimes I do feel like I should be doing other things other than solidly stuff like this, but I can't not. It's just endlessly fascinating. American politics really fascinates me. And Chelsea Wind, thank you from Australia. Thank you for your support. Thanks, JP. They say, I say they. I don't know. You don't know what gender people are. So thank you, everybody. I meant the bloke. How do we get Brewbringer? Right, yeah, this is true. Ivan had, I don't know what he was doing here. They usually come a couple of mornings a week, come round, and this is the afternoon. I don't know why he was here, and he's gone now. So anyway, he came, maybe a cup of tea and left. So brilliant. I don't know how you get one of those. I thought so, Chelsea. I thought so. Thank you. But I didn't want to presume. Right. Okay. That's enough for me. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for being here. It was a long one. There was a lot of detail to go through. Hopefully it all made sense and we get a better picture of what's going on. The question is, what does Trump do now? He's surely going to try and put a stop to it by opening this investigation and using that because otherwise he would have published it already and he hasn't. So he will do everything he can to stop him coming out. But I think he's in trouble. A lot of trouble, and it could be that this is the undoing of him, the Epstein files and the connection with Jeffrey Epstein to Melania. That's an interesting one. Watch out for that too. Yeah. That is the end of my goodbye. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. I would really appreciate that. Remember, we have a Discord community that I'm rarely at because I just am too busy, but please hang out there. Cheryl's amazing over there and the others, and Grimsoft, who manages that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And you get notifications over there. Thanks to Benny Pie, who sorted out the tech on that front. Thanks to the mods. And thanks to all the people who are members. I might do this. Actually, something I'm going to talk about now. Let me know, probably not here because I'm just about to shut this down, but I don't do enough for my members primarily because I want everything to be free to access for everyone. I don't want you to be a member in order to access it. But I might do like a more of a frivolous pub chat with members where you can just ask whatever questions, and it's really informal and probably not one that's good for the wider internet. So I might have like a Friday night pub chat or something like that for members only, and just say, let's have a chat and a Q&A, and thank you for being members, and just here's a little bit extra for you guys because I don't do enough of that. So anyway, there you go. Don't be too wound up. I actually think, as horrible as a lot of this stuff is, I think it is a challenge for Trump, and that's a good thing because I do not rate him as a democratic leader, and I think the pressure is mounting and mounting. So I'm fairly upbeat. Yes, so there you go. Someone was saying mosh on. I wasn't exactly moshing at the weekend, but I was bouncing as much as my legs could handle while propping myself up. But yes, take care, everybody. Speak to you soon.